What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and I'm here to let you know that The Green Knight is no perfect movie. And in The Green Knight, Gawain, nephew of King Arthur, played by Dev Patel, is challenged to a game of sorts by this tall, intimidating tree-like warrior known as the Green Knight, played by Ralph Ineson. And Gawain believes that he has no choice but is bound by honor and duty to accept this challenge based on the seemingly impossible odds. And when he embarks on this one quest, he encounters several supernatural forces that make him question what it means to live by a code of honor. And I gotta say, I was excited as all hell, but also a little bit nervous to check out this movie for pretty much the same reasons. I love the idea that A24 and David Lowery especially wanted to make this seemingly big budget medieval dark fantasy filled with visual effects that one would assume would be a little bit above their pay grade, but at the same time, medieval movies bring out a set of expectations that differ from each audience member. And sure enough, I didn't know what I was going to get myself into, and it'll definitely piss off a lot of people who aren't into movies like this. There are no big budget action set pieces, at least not in the conventional sense. There aren't as many fantastical elements as the plot may lead you to be, and even when they are, there are certain events that happen that may come across more as plot conveniences as opposed to being integral to the story and character development. A lot of the a lot of the large scale epic shots that are filmed at their most massive are often these Jerry style long tracking shots of Dev Patel just wandering through an empty valley or mountain with an animal companion and not much else, and they kind of serve as the breather in between the more fucked up moments that he experiences. But and the other thing is, even the most observant of audience members are not going to understand every visual metaphor or every line of dialogue on first viewing alone. And if you claim that you do, yeah, whatever. I had to watch this twice just to feel confident about what I'm going to say in this review. But in all honesty, even in its lesser moments, The Green Knight is so sneaky in how well made it is that, in my opinion, it's one of A24's best films. It's definitely their largest in scope, one of their most beautiful, and in my opinion, David Lowery's best as a director ever. I was a little worried going in when I found out that he was the editor. I found an article that said that during the first lockdown, he wasn't satisfied with the original cut and he spent 6 months reworking it. But honestly, when you watch the finished product from start to finish, you wouldn't have even noticed. His triple threat work as director, writer, and editor does such a fantastic job at building up the most crucial moments and paying them off in an incredibly satisfying way. I love the way the Green Knight himself is introduced in the very opening scene. And I love that he's not visibly shown for the first little bit. When he arrives and he bursts through the doors of the round table, we are watching in anticipation alongside the other knights to see what he looks like, who he is, what he has come there to do, and they slowly track through as he approaches the table. He steps into the light of the window as all the flames go out upon entrance. He's still shrouded in shadows to make him more mysterious and intimidating, and before he steps into the light, we hear his voice. We hear Ralph Ineson's dark, menacing voice work that give him such an ominous presence, and it was beautiful and it was haunting, and it sets the overall atmosphere of the film where in one scene it can start off as this tranquil hypnotic drama about taking responsibility, about the difference between free will and having other people do their own will against you to make certain choices. And then in the next scene it'll switch to almost a horror movie filled with this ominous, almost operatic style musical score from Daniel Hart that fits the tone, the atmosphere of the time period and of the scenes so perfectly. In the sound design, the sound design was just eerie. It was creepy as hell. It had my body shaking during a lot of crucial moments. Usually my heart races in a horror movie, but these scenes almost gave me whiplash after each of them ended. And it definitely helped that Andrew Dawes Palermo as cinematographer, I had never heard of him before, but after this, I look forward to seeing where his career goes from here. The cinematography, the surreal imagery that he comes up with, that he crafts on screen, is absolutely gorgeous. It looks massive in scope thanks to all these wide shots of these beautiful medieval locations that portray the vast emptiness of the world, and it also illustrates the amount of isolation and fear that Gawain is experiencing. When he's in these empty locations during the breather moments, it still feels bad because he has nowhere to run to. He has nowhere to hide if he feels as if he's about to give up. And worst of all, he doesn't have anyone to confide in. So they almost have the Jerry style tracking shots still have this bittersweet feeling to them either way. And it's definitely heightened by the fact that a lot of the sets and locations are practical. The Green Knight himself is actually Ralph Ineson in a suit covered with prosthetics, except for probably some of the more obvious shots that required CGI. And the visual effects work were also outstanding. I didn't think they had enough money to accomplish shots like this. Granted, there aren't a ton of moments that require CGI. They make the wise choice of using them sparingly and only if it elevates the story, and that was the best decision that any of them could have made. And Dev Patel, one of my favorite performances of his, maybe my favorite ever. He did a great job at making you always root for him, even when he makes the dumbest of choices. And he highlights that through his constantly terrified facial expressions that if he ever fucks up, it's not based on lack of intelligence, it's more based on lack of experience and bravery, which he always admits to. There are some scenes in the middle where he might as well be called Sir Robin the not always as brave as Sir Lancelot. I know that's not the exact same quote, but I'm excited and nervous as I'm making this video in case it wasn't incredibly clear. It is clear as day, though, that when he interacts with the Knights of the Round Table or his uncle or his mother, that he wants to live up to their expectations. He wants to live up to their legacy. A lot of reviews make him out to be this headstrong and arrogant individual, and while he certainly is in his own introduction, I don't think that's his overall personality in the film. From beginning to end, he's actually a lot more humble and self-loathing, because even though his family members have a huge amount of faith and express it all the time that he can be a courageous person, he has a lot of doubt over whether or not the lifestyle they want for him is even the lifestyle that he wants for himself. So when he's forced to go on this journey, it's not because he feels like it. It's not because he wants to become a better person. It's because people expect him to do what they consider the right thing based on their own preconceived code of honor, which, if you know anything about Dev Patel, code of honor doesn't exactly go together, if you know what I mean. But the ironic thing is, if he didn't follow through with their instructions, if he didn't do as they were told, he wouldn't have learned how to choose to take responsibility for his crappy actions. He wouldn't have learned to choose to be a brave and heroic person because he wants to help people, not because other people want him to help others. It's a surprisingly weird moral act about what it means to have free will to make your own choices and how often you have to be forced to do things that you don't want to do in order to learn and improve upon yourself. The side actors, on the other hand, don't get anywhere as much depth or screen time in comparison to Patel, but at the same time, that actually does make their characters a lot more mysterious whenever they interact with him, and upon second viewing, the slightest line of dialogue or the slightest physical gesture makes you change the way you originally looked at them before, and it makes you wonder how big of a stake they actually had in the movie. Sean Harris as King Arthur, which I feel weird saying that because I've never seen him play a good guy. I'm just so used to seeing him as Solomon Lane. He portrays King Arthur as a much more vulnerable and remorseful king than we would expect, but it's to show that he's willing to express his own faults and regrets in life to Gawain in order to get him to come out of his shell, to make him see that all great men still have flaws, but the important thing is that they learn from them like he has. Even Lysa Arryn from Game of Thrones, she only has like 3 to 5 lines, but she makes a huge impression just because of, again, the against typecasting part where you would expect her to be this ice-cold bitch, but she's actually a much more sweet and sympathetic character than she ever has throughout her career. And the fact that it's her saying these kind things where Gawain says that he has no interesting stories to tell them, she just goes, "You have no interesting stories yet." Like, that line alone just leaves a huge impression, as does Sarita Choudhury. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I've only seen her in Homeland as Saul's wife, and she had nothing to do as Saul's wife there. She makes a huge impression in the little screen time that she has, and nothing that she does throughout the film ever has a concrete explanation. But without spoiling anything, it does suggest that she is pulling some of the strings on Gawain's journey more so than she's letting on before. And it ties into, again, the themes of what it means to have free will to make your own choices, or what happens when other people make choices for you that can benefit you in the future. Now, as for problems, as many people have pointed out, the pacing can meander a little bit in the middle, especially during this extended sequence between Joel Edgerton and Alicia Vikander that, in my opinion, went on for too long, and it felt out of place compared to the beginning and end of the film. That's not to say there weren't any good moments to be had with those scenes. Both of the actors do great work as always. Joel Edgerton has this gruff but still wise and compassionate side to him, and Vikander especially has this seductive, mysterious, and also menacing presence that makes every scene that she's in uncomfortable to watch. There's some foreshadowing that plays a certain role in the end of the film, but the setting of the scenes are different from the rest of the movie. The pacing is slower than the rest of the film, and they do this weird thing that kind of reminded me of a ghost story. There's that one scene in a ghost story where the hippie, hipster, redneck characters, whatever they were, have this monologue that basically summed up the themes of that movie and took away the ambiguity that made a ghost story a fun puzzle piece to have. And in my opinion, there's a conversation between Patel and those two actors where they basically do the exact same thing. And weirdly enough, the conversations they have don't exactly, in my opinion, mesh with some of the themes of the movie. Part of that conversation is dissecting the color symbolism that you see, where they show a lot of red, they show a lot of green, and they contrast between the two. But what Vikander has to say about the color red, I don't think matches up with the symbolism that they were originally going for. I don't want to get too deep into it because it's a bit of a spoiler, but it didn't always make sense. And this is a little bit more of a nitpick, but even though the Green Knight is scary, and Ineson's voice and height definitely play a huge part in that, along with the cinematography and the dim lighting, I didn't like the overall design of the Green Knight. He kind of reminded me of Liam Neeson in A Monster Calls combined with Groot, and there's nothing inherently threatening about that, but at the same time, the stakes that come with him as a villain come from the performance and the overall themes associated with his characterization that I don't want to get too deep into because, again, I would be spoiling it. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but in my opinion, I had an equally amount of good time watching The Green Knight as I did dissecting it. The performances were all top-notch. Each of them make a great impression, whether they be big or small. David Lowery's vision is so precise, artistic, and entertaining all at once. And the way he balances the tones is so well done. Very few filmmakers could ever accomplish anything like that. And after seeing this, I actually can't wait to see what he does with Peter Pan and Wendy. There are still some things I'm worried about it, but I have a hell of a lot more faith in him. I had a blast watching this, and it led to, in my opinion, the best ending I've seen so far. I've seen it twice, and it still blows me away every single time. It still gives me goosebumps. It still gives me whiplash. This was such a great movie that I probably jumbled my words a lot in this video. But you know what? It was worth it. And I'm going to give The Green Knight a 4.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen The Green Knight, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. What's your favorite David Lowery movie? Because up until this, it was probably either a ghost story or Pete's Dragon, because it's a hell of a lot better than the original, that's for sure. In any case, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews. Be sure to like and subscribe, and check out my other videos at Sharp Edge Cinematics. Take care.